We got disconnected, friends. So, picking up where we left off, this show has been there from the beginning, from the earliest of days. If you may recall, we started with our commentary about his ride down that golden escalator from his millionaire's apartment in Trump Towers in front of a hired crowd of extras. And from that moment on, we have sporadically and chaotically, yet consistently, come on the air and ask the probing questions that no one on the right dares ask, and pointed out the glaring issues that no one on the right wanted to acknowledge. Now, this will be my third time redoing this episode because of technical issues. So if I sound a little extra aggravated, it's mostly that. Okay, let's cleanse the palate and start with a little bit of DJ Z music to reset, and then proceed with what we got to say about what we got to say. Give it up for DJ Z and his track entitled Endless Fractal Variations from the unnamed album, A Cosmic Pulse Groove Pad. Live to tape, audio, asset, improvised performance. For those of you who are new to this show, you may be wondering, what gives this guy the right to talk to me about politics? Well, it's everyone's right to express themselves, and I'm just utilizing that and accessing the platforms available to me in this modern electronic commerce of marketing ourselves. I am the product, and there's nobody else involved. Although I cosplay at this being a slightly larger organization than it actually is, CTech Studio is a studio that exists entirely in my imagination. Until such a time that I get massive amounts of bankrolling investment capital to build out what I envision, it really is just me and my thoughts. Real, raw, radically unscripted. And here's the thing. I've been impartially publicly discussing and trying to understand American politics since 1983. Okay? Since before dial-up internet was readily available in people's houses, I was paying attention to the current events and the wide array of headlines and the way in which media outlets report on the events and the way in which people in the world at large discuss them with each other. I do not pretend to be an expert in anything, but I have someone who has come to certain conclusions and put several pins on the imaginary corkboard because of 40 plus years worth of impartial observation. And when I say impartial, I am not a Democrat, I am not a Republican, I'm not even an independent. I'm someone criticizing the entire double-barrel echo chamber political ideological construct here in these great grand United States of ours. Because it clearly has problematic issues all over the place. One of the questions I get a lot from dyed-in-the-wool Trump supporters that don't want to look at his flaws is, why do I support Biden so much when obviously he's doing all these horrible things? And that's the catch. I don't. I'm not a Biden supporter. I don't blindly accept that he's the lesser of two evils. I've constantly spoken out against not constantly, that's the incorrect term. But I have, it is integral to my worldview that we question this entire notion of choosing the lesser of two evils. Because it is predicated on an absurdly biased notion that there's more evil in the world than good. And wowzers, if that doesn't stink of neurolinguistic, ideological manipulation, us versus them conditioning, psyop programming, I don't know what is or does. What is that? What does stink of that? If that doesn't stink to high heaven of being exactly that. So, friends, the very first knee-jerk maneuver, like the opening overture, always from Trump supporters is, why do you irrationally hate Trump? What's wrong with you? Did the media condition you and infect you with Trump derangement syndrome? To which I respond repeatedly. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I've said it 4 times today. Well, this will be the 4th time today saying it. And I don't know if it made it into the 4-minute cut that survived the terrible multiple disconnection issues or not. But who built a literal golden idol statue wearing an American flag shorts and blue corduroy jacket thing? It wasn't me. I didn't build such an idol in direct contradiction to the teachings of the Bible, whilst pretending to be a rigorous adherent to the Bible's often self-contradicting rules and regulations. That was your people, dear Trumptopian attackers. Okay, so your standard boilerplate pre-programmed talking points need not apply, especially if they're all oriented around accusing those who refuse to bend the knee to Donald Trump of being deranged and mentally unfit. That's fundamental us versus them conditioning 101. Those people over there are bad because they are crazy. They are insane. They are evil. They are sleeping with satanic demons. I get asked by folks, why do I irrationally hate Trump? I don't irrationally hate Trump. I knew, based on historical evidence and independently verifiable facts, that this guy is less than trustworthy and has a tendency to mildly exaggerate, speak in mostly vagaries, which can be hyper-interpreted, and typically not follow through on most of the outlandish claims and promises that he makes. I knew that about him from long before he abandoned the Democratic Party, of which he was a member for most of his adult life. Not that there's anything inherently wrong with switching parties, but switching parties and then pretending never to have been a Democrat and acting as if you've always hated the Democrats because they are robot-built, baby-eating lizard people from the moon. Well, that's a level of absurdity that I cannot swallow. I cannot abide by that. And the dude abides, primarily. But there are things, dear friends, especially dear dudists, my fellow dudists out there. I am officially an ordained minister of the Church of Latter-day Dude. There are things not worthy of abiding. There are things that must not stand. And Trump's absurdity must not stand. The potential lasting legacy of either a successful Trump administration, second or otherwise, or, and this is something I was thinking about as I was trying to de-escalate my stress after realizing that my 2-hour super eloquent podcast recording I just made did not go live and did not successfully make it onto the internet. And that I had to do it all over again. And that's this. They are going to make a martyr out of him, whoever they are. The base might do it. Like the core, the few who remain in the core of the hardest core, central pillar of the Trumptopian ideology construct, they might try to make him a martyr. In fact, that kind of language has already been previewed and teased, right? which will bring that sort of thing brings us to my ultimate point, which I had very eloquently outlined in the non-existent previous version of this episode. But let's get to a couple of things that we need to cover. Forgive me if I've already said any of the following, if you already heard this, but it bears repeating. If there was anything that confirmed my suspicions, it was when Trump boasted with blustering bravado that only I alone, quote unquote, can fix it. I alone can fix this. As he depicted all of government as a cesspit of vile, demonic something or another. You'll note, Trump leaves a lot of things to the imagination because he knows, as a savvy political operator, he's savvy enough, because I think some of his pretend ignorance and pretend stupidity are truly just an act. Some of it is him habituating that and becoming stupid. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean everybody can be stupid. The smartest people in the world are often stupid. It's just the thing. We got to accept that and not get all panties in a bunch about it, right? Ugh. And I know that phrase is from before a certain era and no longer apropos, but don't get whatever you wear as underpants up in a bunch. Don't get your boxer briefs in a bunch, bruh. Don't get your tighty whities in a bunch. Because it works. It's like dude. It's kind of irregardless of gender. This guy boasted and claimed many a thing that he did not do, right? When he said, I alone can fix all these horrible things, some of which that he was saying were purely imaginary. That for me was that just confirmation. That he is what I've always kind of thought he was. A fakir in the ancient traditional sense. A sham. A showman. With bluster and bravado and lots of sort of bells and whistles and vagaries and basically shenanigans and malarkey to just, spew words that all are of the point I'm trying to make. But even the things that his own base believed were proof of his brilliance were not really. One of the clearest examples, and I'm fairly certain I talked about this in some episode or another very early on, right after it happened, but I invite you all to try and recall the air conditioning company situation. Oh, what was the name of the company? I totally told this story really smoothly in one of the recordings that did not work just now. And now, was it Carrier? I think it was Carrier Air Conditioning. Remember, there was all this big hoopla and at a press conference, and he supposedly saved, and I'm making ironic bunny ear quotes in the air with my fingers. He supposedly saved Carrier Air Conditioning by talking them into not closing down a plant in some important voter swing state and moving the work down to Mexico. Guess what, though? Dun, dun, dun. In an unimaginable twist of fate, it turned out that within days, if not a couple of weeks at the most, Carrier, that same air conditioning company, shut down a plant in a different location of about equivalent size and sent all of that work down to Mexico because they never halted production, development, and, building of the new premises. Now, did Trump talk about that ever? No. Did Fox News report about that? No. Did that fact penetrate the hubbub and the self-congratulatory conversation of the Trumptopian water cooler talk? I highly doubt it. I don't know for a fact. Maybe somewhere deep down people were thinking about that because they understood that happened to be the case, that after all the bells and whistles and all the propaganda and all the patting himself on the back about saving those jobs, other people lost their jobs. Other Americans lost their jobs, and that company still did what it was going to do. They just did a little show and dance of reorganizing it so that Trump could claim that he saved hundreds of jobs and he forced Carrier air conditioning to stay in America, which is complete bunk. That's just one of so many examples. Let's get to something more recent. Guess who appointed the person in charge at the EPA that was successfully lobbied by the very same train company whose train derailed in Ohio and whose decisions led to a toxic cloud? Guess who? I think I have to explain it for those who refuse to see it. Trump. The Trump administration and its appointees were successfully lobbied by the self-same train company at fault for the derailment. And let's talk about derailment. Let's cut through some nonsense that's floating out there. Trains have been going off their tracks since the day we invented trains. And for a long time, and I wonder why, the industry was not required by any regulation to monitor and report its safety incidents at all. Which party maniacally, ideologically, blindly believes that less regulation is inherently automatically Christ-like and better for everyone? Although that makes absolutely zero sense. The GOP, and that's been their issue since long before Trump. He didn't invent the GOP. He just saw an opportunity to kind of hijack it in his way and try to style the follower, try to co-opt a bunch of the base for himself. And we'll get into that a little bit more in just a hot second. Which party has fought tooth and nail like ravenous beasts for decades to deregulate every effing industry? Including, dun dun dun, no surprise here, the banking industry. It sure as hell was not the mechanical robot lizard baby-eating people from the left. They were quite villainously trying to maintain and or impose stricter safety regulations on all of those things. So the toxic train cloud derailment, the tech bro starter investment capital bank collapse, which, by the way, lots of hyperbolic fear-mongering around that. We can do a whole special episode about that. And I love how adorably all the sudden overnight banking geniuses are accusing everyone of going full commie because the FDIC insurance is kicking in. And that's just a quadruple facepalm moment. That reminds me, and I love to bring this up, and I'll bring it up 1,000 times. It's a pin on the corkboard. That reminds me of how blatantly and adamantly and fervently and foaming at the mouth the right-wing conspiracy paranoia machine insisted that FEMA was preparing to kill us all 40 years ago. Now, the worst thing that I've been able to realize in that time that FEMA can be accused of is of being institutionally racist and helping, guess who? Middle class and lower income, white, conservative Americans a little bit more than, guess which group? Minorities in inner cities. That's real. That's been actually happening. Now, I'm old enough to remember when we were all going to be in boxes trucked away by FEMA by 1985. Oh, sorry, no, erase that. 88. Oh, no, 89, really. Oh, it didn't happen in the 80s. So then they forgot about it for a hot minute, and then it was going to happen by 1994, 97, 99. How many people, I wonder, and I've asked this before, and I'm sure I'll have to ask it again, how many people who blindly redistributed anti-FEMA conspiracy theory content are now currently receiving financial aid from FEMA after the whiplash psycho tour of crazy weather we've been having over the last 3 years? Which, by the way, the same people who thought FEMA was going to kill us also think the weather is being engineered by demons from Satan's spawn. People ask me, why do you hate Trump so much? I don't hate Trump. It's just obvious that he's picking up on the GOP's 60-year-old scam. And here is my central issue with the GOP. Has been my entire life since Ronald Reagan, since I arrived in this country, and Ronald Reagan, a former cigarette campaign model and spokesperson, read commercial actor, aka part of the Hollywood elite that's the evil cabal, supposedly, according to today's GOP mainstream thinking. Ronald Reagan, who once performed in a movie in drag. Ronald Reagan, who, if he was alive today, could probably not get nominated in today's hyper-conservative psycho environment of would-be white nationalist aspirational political ideology becoming mainstream. Back then, I realized that the GOP is guilty of one blatantly huge, massive hypocrisy at the center of all their malarkey. They like to pretend, privately, amongst themselves, and out loud and publicly, occasionally when it suits them, they like to pretend, and I think also sort of psychotically believe, and I think that it's a psychosis, right? And I'm not saying that just to be rude. I think there's a mental health problem here that needs analysis, that is a very unpopular opinion. As you will note on my Facebook page, I have often disclaimed that I have highly weird, unpopular opinions that tend to trigger people on both sides of the ideological, engineered treadmill of argumentation, wedge issue, isolation, solo echo chamber. But I digress. They pretend to themselves enough to believe in a mentally unfit way, that they are the divinely chosen political party that belongs to Jesus Christ himself. Now, the irony being that I'm fairly certain a serious study of Christ's words and immediate teachings would indicate that he himself did not engage in partisan politics and did not care to. Put a pin on the corkboard. We've talked about it before. We'll probably have to talk about it again. So, the GOP claims to be the party of Christ. What did Christ ask his followers to do? He asked them quite seriously to feed the hungry, house the homeless, and heal the sick for free. Now, how many right-wing, conservative, hyper-Trump supporting megachurches also have a housing complex on their compounds? How many billionaire church moguls personally provide health care for others? Now, I'm sure there are exceptions, but broadly speaking, and particularly when we're talking about the GOP as political operatives in Congress, how often has that party that claims to be the chosen, selected, preferred people of Christ in political matters, how often have they legislatively worked against any and all projects or legislative issues that attempt to feed the hungry, house the homeless, and heal the sick? And uninsured. Let's add uninsured. To be clear, right? Which party is vilifying the tax collector? And who did Jesus hang out with the most? Which party is duplicitously against porn but also quietly quite addicted to it and doesn't want to admit it? The self-proclaimed party of Christ. Which party has been the physical embodiment of hypocrisy for the last 45 years? Now, mind you, and I have to say this over and over and over again, just because I am criticizing the GOP and celebrities within it does not mean that I am blindly defending whoever they are targeting as the opposition in that given moment. I didn't vote for Biden. I don't think he's doing an amazing job. I'm not blindly defending him or his family. What I am pointing out is that it's really fascinating how often the Trump organization, quote unquote, which is primarily the Trump family, accuses others of doing exactly what they themselves, it so happens to turn out, happen to also be doing. Did the Biden family genuinely commit any crimes of corruption? Definitely weird, suspicious, nepotistic type things went down. But the irony is that, everything that Jared Kushner is accused of having done that is against the law of the land happened in large part during the race and or while they were in office. And I got to come back to this. So, friends, in real time, the almost daily ZenCast presents Good Morning Trumptopia has come on the air and asked the hard questions I don't see the right asking about Trump, has pointed out the glaring and painfully obvious problematic issues with Trump, which everyone on the right, whether they are acolytes and hardcore fans or not, tend to just ignore. And I have in real time been postulating my theories about what's going on, right? And here's something. I don't usually want to be self-congratulatory. I'm not one for making predictions. Mostly because I find most people who run around making predictions don't acknowledge when their predictions fail and just repackage them a few miles down the road. Which is something I find not only irritating, I find it intellectually dishonest and lazy. But one of the earliest things I said about Trump is that it seems to me if there is an elite class of political manipulators who pre-screen and pre-select, the corruption, I've said this multiple times, before Trump invented Stop the Steal. If there's corruption in politics and manipulation of who's in office, I can assure you, it doesn't happen in the voting booth. It's got nothing to do with ballots. It's got everything to do with who gets pre-screened and pre-selected and pre-approved to run in the first place. Now, that's a conversation most of America is not ready to have. Plenty of people out there realize this. But the bulk majority on both sides of the ideological double-barrel echo chamber refuse to even look at that issue. Pin on the corkboard. And if you hear weird swishy noises, it's just me enjoying a hot cup of mushroom coffee alternative beverage. I think it's Mud Water this month. If you want discount coupons for Mud Water, Rise, or Everyday Dose, in my opinion, the three best mushroom coffee-based alternatives, they're not paying me. I don't have a thing with them. I genuinely love these products. Hit me up. I do have discount codes, but every customer has access to that. So you'll have discount codes to distribute amongst your friends too. Once you get on any one of these three products, I'm currently doing exclusively Mud Water. My preferred thing is to blend them all together. Okay, boom, there. You want to take advantage of those discount links? Head on over to solo.to/Mr. Zeppo. And by the way, if any of those links ever fails to work, please let me know by dropping me an email or a direct message in whichever preferred social media platform you have. Just be sure that you're clear about what you're reporting. Don't just say, link doesn't work, as one individual brought up to my attention. And I'm like, what link? From where? Please be more specific. And then they blocked me. I'm like, okay, bro. I'm like, let me know what link, and I'll try to fix it. Thanks. Okay. So that's my beef. Let me just wrap that up. My beef with the GOP is that. I really need them to stop claiming to be Christ's preferred political party and then working against everything that Christ taught. And we've done plenty of discussion about that before. I'm sure we'll come back and talk about it again. If you haven't already, put a pin on the corkboard. Let's take a quick mental purge break. A little bit of atmospheric trap from Remix Live, a live-to-tape improvised recorded performance entitled Holographic Dreaming of a Gentler Tomorrow? A Gentler something. I forget. The title gets cut off here on this screen. But here we go. Let's take a listen. To wit, about the parties, I'm well aware that they are more than likely complicit with one another's malarkey. So, no one needs to come at me with whataboutist arguments about how horrible the other party is. Okay? I get that. I critique the GOP because I've got a specific issue with their bold-faced bullshittery about Jesus. That just chaps my hide. It rubs me the wrong way. It probably has everything to do with the fact that I had to go through my own aha moment realization about organized religion, which we've talked about at length in previous episodes. But please, don't preach about morality and sin and about who is and isn't going to heaven and or hell, and then do what you do in politics. Because that, my friends, pardon the language, that's a load of bullshit. For anyone concerned, I have the same general opinion about the institutions of organized religion all the way around. The people who have faith in a divine being and some message of hope and of self-healing and of redemption, I'm fine with that. The moment you start wanting to kill other people, oppress other people, legislate your ideology into legal law, then we got a bone to pick with you. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. In my mind, it doesn't make sense. Organized religion should be a practice for your spiritual growth and progression, not a tyranny of top-down oppression. Oh, wow, look at the entire history of organized religion. I don't know if I failed to connect these dots in this episode, and I've talked about it. This is my fourth time doing the episode because I keep getting disconnected. But here's the big issue with the golden statue they made, right? It's literally something that the founding father of the Judeo-Christian tradition says, bad idea, don't do it. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't come at me with no Bible-thumping talking points. And dear Bible thumpers, if you want to have a serious discussion about what is and is not in the Bible, my first suggestion to you is go read it in Aramaic. And if you can't read Aramaic, go find an academic and intellectually honest, direct to your native language translation of the original Aramaic. The Greek came a little later. That's still better than the Latin and anything that came after that, because that's something that Bible thumpers don't understand. The Bible that they are thumping, especially if it's anything post-NIV, is a derivative work of derivative works. It is a copy of a low-grade, low-resolution copy of a mistranslated and purposefully altered document, whose root sources were originally in a language that is lost to the spoken tongue. No one speaks Aramaic. No one speaks Latin either. I guess some people speak Aramaic and some people speak Latin because you can take classes in those languages, but they're categorically dead languages. If you want to talk about the Bible, that's the place to start. You're not going to Bible thump at me with some post-King James, plain English language, American, watered-down, whitewashed nonsense. Because you don't even know what you're arguing. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. But that's just a hard, cold reality about that document. And let's be honest about Trump and the Bible. That man has never read it, and it shows. The other thing, just in case I didn't mention it in this re-recording of this fourth attempt to make this episode, and I apologize if I did just say this at some point earlier today, and then you've already heard it, but that golden idol statue is not only against what is taught in the Bible, it's also technically in violation of American flag law. There are laws about how to treat and respect the image and the physical object of the American flag. And quite duplicitously, there's a whole industry of making American flag paraphernalia that is explicitly against the law. Like, you cannot have shorts that are the American flag. You cannot have a cowboy hat that is printed like the American flag. You cannot have American flag napkins. You are not supposed to have American flag tablecloths. But ain't no one batting an eye and no one giving a flying fart in high wind about that. Now, as I said before, I've never been a blind bender of the knee to any regime. A law's got to make sense for it to be accepted and be welcomed by the populace as a rule we all agree to. What I find hilarious and charming is that these flag laws, in theory, were a rule we all agreed to. And then everyone proceeded to totally disregard it and not give a flying fart. And it wasn't even windy. You can find all of DJ Zed's body of work by clicking on over to solo.to/Mr. Zeppo and finding the SoundCloud link. And you can read all about the many musical adventures of DJ Zed and Mr. Zeppo by going to solo.to/Mr. Zeppo and clicking on the Wattpad link. Your support and social media engagement is much appreciated. All commentary is welcome, but be advised, don't flood my DMs with nonsense you could just be posting on your profile. We can have a public discussion. If you want to have a private discussion, it's because you want me to comment on the podcast. That's the irony. Almost all the people who send me stuff in DMs then freak out when I say, so you want me to talk about this on the podcast? And comment on your responses? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then what are you doing in my DMs? Unannounced, uninvited. If I prompt something and invite the people to DM me, that's a different story. Okay, I digress. Let's wrap this up. Friends, there's so much we can say about Trump. And on this eve of his would-be potential indictment, as has been conjured up by the water cooler gang of people writing headlines, he may or may not get arrested. And I will not be surprised if somehow Charlie falls for Lucy pulling the football out of his way and everything gets, all clusterfucked and Trump never gets arrested. I am an extremely early adopter, if not one of the influencers that brought about the popularity of the hashtag 2 wings, 1 bird. Because I've been thinking about that and talking about that and using it since Ronald Reagan was in office. These two parties claim to be separate entities, but they're attached to the same machine. Okay, so there's that. As I was pointing out, I mean, look at what's happened. The pendulum of American culture is indeed way more extremely to the alt-right than it has ever been collectively in living memory. Was it more alt-right at some point in the past? I mean, yeah, I guess right before the Civil War, sure. Maybe right afterwards too. But in living memory, and there are people who almost can reach that far back in their memory, but in terms of our functional living memory of like just the past 60 years, it's a clear political trend of pushing the pendulum to the left, letting it react, and then pushing the pendulum to the right, and then letting it react. Why is this what happens? It might be sheer hubris of political consternation, of people brought up inside a double-barrel echo chamber of it's us versus them because they're the crazy ones and we're the ones with the righteous plan. And that's like, it's a double-barrel echo chamber of that. So if that doesn't make any sense to you, we can break it down if you want, but there's a pin on the corkboard. What's sad and unfortunate is that people didn't see Trump coming and fell for it. Some of us were like, hey, no, this guy's a charlatan. This guy is literally a living snake oil salesman. He's literally tried to peddle his brand name steak from questionable sources, a really crappy, low-quality wine, all things that have mostly not been successful. His wealth is not that of a self-made man with brilliant ideas, but rather that of a legacy of corruption and, questionable business practices. And a lot of, what's that name for when someone's just a rich baby? I forget. And I'm not trying to call in names, right? I'm not doing what the right does. The right doesn't want to actually solve problems. The right wants to troll liberals and own them. Whatever that means. That sounds like meaningless psycho jargon to me. Where's legislative action? Where's the infrastructure resolutions to fix the crumbling infrastructure? We got a lot of PR about Infrastructure Week during the Trump administration, but no actual tangible solutions. That's just an extension of the GOP trajectory of being this hypocritical, two-faced party pretending to be Christ's chosen thing and then doing everything Christ doesn't want you doing. Now, in terms of Trump and his cult of personality, the most absurd part of it all, and I'll wrap things up here, is, in my humble opinion, his obviously fake demeanor of manly, robust, capable manhood. Right? The statement, I alone can fix this cesspool of swamp monsters and baby-eating dragons from another dimension. Like, what? I alone can fix whatever imaginary things you're all fear-mongered about by the reason, the dark corners of the conspiracy theory machines that churn out conspiracy theory content. Trump understood that you can evoke conspiracy theory content without actually talking about it, and wink, wink, nudge, nudge your way into blind support for anything you want, as long as you appear to be fighting for the righteous cause of we are the good guys and everyone else is sucking Satan's balls. And like the absurdity of that is that he himself is a whiny, fragile, delicate, crybaby snowflake. A capable, manly man with a spine would not have spent as much time bitching and moaning about anyone and everyone that disagreed with him or had a problem with his behavior as Trump has. Bottom line, right there, folks. And it's evidentiary in the way his fans behave. The F Your Feelings crowd are often quite emotional about Trump if you dare to question them about him. If you dare to point out his obvious and ludicrous flaws. All of that is evidence of psychological manipulation, ego attachment. There's zero legislative logic here. His administration did nothing but be a reflection and a holographic recursion iterance of Trump himself. Bluster, hubris, inappropriate innuendo, false accusations, hypocrisy, nepotism, violation of federal and state law, corruption, and oh my God, the very, very first meme I ever made about Trump, the emoluments clause. It's really fascinating to me that the first set of potential indictments that are finally being brought about, apparently, we'll see, we'll know by Monday if things happen this week or not. I remember how with Trump, they were going to lock her up, quote unquote, next month, next week. Oh no, we couldn't do it this week because of imaginary reasons, because he literally didn't lift a finger. I was having this conversation earlier in between recordings. One of the most fascinating things about that whole early episode in the Trump universe is that he swore up and down he was going to arrest Hillary Clinton, James Comey, what's his name from the FBI, and a whole list of other people. He didn't lift a finger. Now I thought, and this is one of the many ways in which I was wrong about Trump, I thought he was going to do something nefarious and corrupt. I thought he was going to weaponize the Department of Justice. Curiously, he sort of did, but I think he was testing the waters to see if he could build up to forcing legal action against Clinton. But I think he probably, and I'm purely speculating based on the pattern of and the absence of evidence, there's zero evidence that he made any kind of effort to either above board or below board make a move to incarcerate Clinton. And to hear him talk about it in his speeches, he was going to personally put the handcuffs on her. And he was going to make the Justice Department do it. He was going to make sure, guaranteed it, didn't bother doing a damn thing. Not even some corrupt, underhanded violation of the law thing. Now, he did other weird, corrupt, underhanded violation of the law type activities. Not the least of which was using campaign finance money to pay off a prostitute, to keep her quiet before the campaign, before the election process. And then there's all the other issues. What kind of boggles my mind is that, and again, I am no legal expert. I do not pretend to be one, unlike some people. And you know who you are out there. You overnight legal experts, overnight vaccination expert, overnight real estate law expert, overnight banking regulation experts. I don't pretend none of that shit. My opinion is my opinion, flawed as it may be. And the first thing I tell you is there's a lot I probably don't know. I don't pretend otherwise. But from that perspective, it always made way more sense to me that they should go after him for violating the emoluments clause. It was one of the first memes I made about him. Emoluments clause, emoluments clause, emoluments clause. Not that I made enough memes, not that any of my Trump memes went viral. Several other accounts did, though. Some of them cribbing off my notes, kind of. Or at least hitting similar tones. But I'm not jealous. I'm just not there yet on my 10-year-long journey to overnight success. My point is, friends, it's clear that I have to say this all too often. None of my critique of conspiracy theory content means that I naively and automatically believe there are zero conspiracies. Trump himself obviously conspired whilst in the highest supposed office in government to do a bunch of dumb things, some of which are coming around to bite him in the ass, some of which inexplicably are not. The emoluments clause thing was just always an egregiously obvious violation. He's supposed to relinquish direct control of his corporation and put it in a, what was it? Some sort of thingamahoo account. He was supposed to create a receivership, or I forget what the term is. And he said that he might do it, that he would do it, that he was going to do it, that he's doing it, he never did it. And then, quite curiously, foreign national government agencies started sending representatives to stay at his hotels a lot, even though they weren't doing anything directly to, engage with him. I'm no legal expert, but shit like that stinks to high heaven of a violation of the emoluments clause. I could be wrong. But I don't think I am. And so it's curious. I'm hoping that they're saving that one as like the pinch hitter at the end that knocks it out of the park. Right? Now, this thing about paying Stormy Daniels to keep quiet, maybe that's just the first one to fully mature. I think it may strike some people as odd, but it takes a while to do these kinds of investigations. And there's a reason why we don't bum rush people into indictments. Now, to say that the justice system is impeachably fair is a lie. Oh, one of the ironies, I know I haven't said it on this take. It's a lost statement from a previous take that got disconnected. One of the funniest things that people ever pointed out to me, I would point out in conversation how many court cases Trump team lost. It's approaching 75, I believe, regarding the election. Now, from the best of my understanding, from being able to review some, obviously not all, that's a lot of content, some of the court documents from the 70 some odd cases about the election supposedly getting stolen. Team Trump's legal problem was they could not provide the evidence in court that they claimed to have on television. Because by law, they can bullshit anything they want on Fox News. Ever since they changed the laws about the news. And, oh, surprise, surprise, that's something that Democrats helped in achieving. But they still are bound by rules and laws and regulations about what is and is not admissible in court. Hyperbolic, nonsense statements are not evidence and are inadmissible in court. And curiously, they lost 70 plus odd court cases where they would say on TV, this is the case where we're going to bring the evidence that's going to prove every crazy claim we've ever made about the election being so fraudulent. And yet they lost. Someone in some conversation said, well, don't you know that all the courts are owned by the evil libtards? I'm like, excuse me? Do you know who the, now of course the name just, you know who owns the courts, dear friends? And this is not weird, crazy conspiracy theory. This isn't even remotely made up. The Heritage Foundation and one other think tank whose name only surfaces when I'm not trying to record an episode. The Heritage Foundation and another group literally pre-screen, pre-approve, and present, please pay close attention to the following, both Democrat and Republican presidents with a list of candidates for all judicial appointments. Similar to the FBI conundrum, it's hilarious and adorable to watch the Republican Party and the Republican base blindly follow suit as they vilify the FBI. Guess who appoints and gets appointed the most to leadership positions and mid-level staffing positions at the FBI? Republicans, the Republican Party. Democrats appoint Republicans to the FBI. Although it is, by cultural definition, supposed to be a politically nonpartisan entity, and one could make the argument that they succeed at that, and one could make the argument that they don't. The fact of the matter is, a vast plurality, if not the leading majority of people at the FBI, tend to be Republicans. Who owns the courts? The Republican, whatever mysterious forces own the Republican Party. Let's put it that way. Because I don't think the Republican Party I don't think that's where the buck truly stops. So, they were like flabbergasted when I pointed that out. But the Supreme Court that overturned Roe versus Wade also shut down Trump's legal shenanigans. Judges pre-approved for Trump by the Heritage Foundation and that other institution whose name I always forget, which is, I think, slightly more deeply involved. They shut down and rejected Trump's court cases. So there must be something to that. In the end, my hope is that with more and more obvious and impossible to deny fact-based evidence, the Trump base will have their aha moment, take the blinders off, and stop blindly idolizing Trump. Now, that's just a bare minimum. What I really hope is that those people walk away from that experience realizing that they got played and manipulated by a larger machine of manipulation than Trump himself. Because Trump was carrying water, if you know the phrase, right? For all his bluster about being an independent guy and being his own thing and being the only one who could fix the stuff, he was playing ball with whatever's going on. And that, to me, puts a nail in the coffin in all right-wing QAnon-associated hysteria-driven conspiracy theory content. Because if it in any way was contingent on Trump being a supposed outsider, I think it's really hard to continue to blindly believe that. I mean, unless you really, really got your head buried deep, deep in the Kool-Aid jar, you know, to mix metaphors. But he's going to be a crybaby. He already has been. Since he left office, he has been like 60-40, whiny, fragile snowflake and blustering, chest-beating macho man. But he hasn't delivered the goods. A truly capable man with an actual spine would have wasted fewer words and dealt with the issue and taken the hit on the jaw like a man and gone to jail if it came to it. Because for all this talk of masculinity and all this talk of being a manly man, blah, 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 categorically, through his behavior, he proves himself to not be that which he glorifies himself as. And as I've said from the beginning, the only person undermining Trump is Trump himself. He doesn't need a witch hunt. He is his own roaming clusterfuck tornado of self-undermining baloney. And that has been true since long before he decided to run for office. The real issue isn't that he ran for office, it's that whoever the gatekeepers are let him in and allowed him to play the game. For what reasons? I could be wrong, but the pattern suggests that maybe, just maybe, I was onto something with this idea of pushing the American socioeconomic political culture further to the right than it has ever been pushed in living memory in the last 60 years. Because, no matter how you slice it, even as his own popularity wanes in the GOP, the extreme alt-right mentality that he helped mainstreamify is carrying the momentum past him. Even if he doesn't get arrested, in the long run, he's going to get bypassed because someone Trumpier than Trump is going to come around who's also savvier to how to successfully play the political game. Is that Ron DeSantis? Maybe, maybe not. Is that someone else that we're not going to see coming that's going to storm the field and sort of surprise everyone out of the blue? That's where I would be concerned. Then again, Ron DeSantis has got the straight pipeline, the insider pipeline. He's already in with enough of the donor class. He's already in and connected to enough of the GOP infrastructure. He's already in with, a big, huge swath of the Trump base and the GOP at large. So, who knows? It's going to be a fascinating election cycle. If Donald Trump gets arrested, and I'll wrap things up here. If Donald Trump gets arrested in the next 42, 48, 60 some odd hours, sometime this weekend or next week, the biggest concern is how successfully, how widely popular his crucifixion, his faux crucifixion, because they'll do it to him themselves, right? We blame the Romans, but it was the Jewish people that got Jesus crucified. I mean, they all could have spoke up, right? When Pontius Pilate was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want me to do this? I wash my hands of it. They will crucify the GOP itself and the Trump base in themselves will pseudo crucify him, blame the leftists and the socialists and the communists and the aliens and the robots and the spider people and the lizard people and the brain eating baby monsters and whatever the F they're trending on lately. And they will then conveniently celebrate him as a martyr for as long as it is useful, and no more than that. 50 years from now, whether he gets arrested or doesn't, Trump will be a laughable footnote in history that most people will be like, oh God, what an embarrassing episode. But the immediate concern is if they successfully create this image of him being crucified, of him being made a martyr, they could, if there's enough momentum left in the base, if there's enough people still clinging to this cult of personality that didn't get burnt out by the unsuccessful, totally failed, and then pretended to be covered up coup that they're all in denial was a coup, an attempted, whatever you want to call it, there's where we might luck out. I think enough of them are burnt out already. Enough people on the ground are like, you know what? He has been bullshitting us this entire time. And I'm done. I'm going to go suck up to Ron DeSantis and pretend he isn't bullshitting me in the entire time. That's my concern is that we'll fail to get a true realization and we'll fall right back into the same treadmill, the same engineered treadmill of us versus them argumentation. And as I've asked 1,000 times before, friends, if your political party depends, relies, insists on dehumanizing and vilifying the oppositional party, you have some questions to be asking your political party. Because that's the oldest known human psyop in history. And ain't no reason it should be successfully working today in 2023, 2024. And yet, here we are. It's been a roller coaster ride, friends, and I think it may seem like smooth sailing from here on out, but we're about to hit some turbulence before long, and another wild, swinging, reactionary overreaction and overcorrection in some other direction. Stay tuned for more real, raw, radically unscripted, observational criticism of the world around us. Travel with me backwards in time. If you have not heard the backlog of episodes, trust me, they should still work independent of the fact that they were from some time ago. In fact, some of them may hit even stronger now. Because dare I say, maybe my words have aged ever so slightly finer than most of Trump's public proclamations. Who knows? I could be wrong on that point, but I invite you to explore. There's plenty of episodes to check out of Good Morning Trumptopia going all the way back to 2016, and there are plenty more to come. Until next time, friends, I bid you a fond farewell, and I ask you, go be good human beings to each other out there in the real world and in the political discourse. And that is the latest madness from behind the orange wall. Thank you for listening to GMT, a special segment of the Almost Daily ZenCast. Stay woke, Trumptopia. Stay woke. That still cracks my ass up. I want to edit it out, but I also want to keep it. Stay woke. Oh, we should do a whole episode about the how absurd the obvious manipulation of argumentation and engineered wedge issue is woke as a thing. The aspirational leftist definition and the hyper-vilified depersonification of the vilified version from the right. It's perfect. Peace out. This episode is over. Till next time.